So can I ask you to first turn off your brains and quickly just cross your legs without thinking? And yes, I mean you men too. Without thinking. Now look down. Is your left leg over your right leg, or is your right leg over the top of your left leg? Because it matters to me. You see, if your left leg is over your right leg right now, then you are more to be a decision maker based on how other people are going to think. You are in the 74th percentile of the New Zealand population. You'll walk into a house looking to buy it and stop and go, will my family be happy here? If, however, your right leg is currently over your left leg, then you're more like me. Damn sexy, give yourselves a pat on the back. You are an analytical thinker by trade. You walk into that same house looking to buy it, go straight up to the real estate agent, ask them what the rate of return would be if you were to flog it off in 3 months. But you see, I know what you're thinking right now. You're wondering, have you gone into the wrong room? What on earth is a brain hacker talking about legs for? You see, this is my gift to you. This is a networking event where you will meet new people. Wouldn't you like to know what kind of conversation you're going to have before you sit down? Just look down at their legs. That came out wrong, hey? Not in a creepy way. But would you rather know that you're going to be talking about Jacinda Ardern's political agenda or the state of Donald Trump's hair? Because from this point forwards, of course, that is entirely up to you. You are welcome. Yes, my name is Arnie Wilson, and 8 years ago, I hit a pretty rock bottom place indeed. At the age of 37, and I can already tell the lefties in the room who have done the math, I was in an unfortunate position where I was sitting opposite someone who was about to change my life forever. You see, the situation was unfortunate because my oncologist had just told me that I'd been diagnosed with stress-induced aggressive stage 3 hormone receptor positive breast cancer. Now, you're probably thinking that I was upset about the cancer. I didn't have time to be sick. I didn't have time for cancer. Whatever. And I also actually wasn't overly surprised by his use of the term stress-induced. I mean, when you're running a $52 million portfolio and you're doing 60, 70-hour weeks of work, you kind of know that you're a little bit stressed. It was, in fact, a question that my then partner asked the oncologist that made me pay attention. It was the answer to his question that is the reason and the purpose why I stand before you here today. You see, my partner asked the question, just make sure I've got this right. Doc, what are the statistical chances of Arnie surviving this? And my oncologist turned and said these famous last words: I cannot and I will not give you the statistical chances of your survival, because the moment I do, your brain will fixate on that number only and reduce your rate back to health. Now, in the words of my little 8-year-old Shelley, wait, what? Did my doctor just tell me that there was some miracle power within my brain that could either speed up my health or slow down my health? In that instant, I was hooked. And for the last 8 years, I've been maniacal about finding what is within. There's my type A personality shining through. Now, we know that the brain can only survive outside of the human body for up to 6 minutes without blood and oxygen. And yet, in today's hyperkinetic environment where we're trying to be all to everyone, we forget to feed it through simple means such as oxygen and through providing that blood flow. Simple things that we are missing. Now, the human brain has evolved over 100,000 years and is one of only 3 species on this entire planet, of which there's 52 million other species, 3 species that have a new form brain called the frontal lobe. Now, those two species that are up on the wall are the chimpanzee and, of course, us. The frontal lobe allows us to think existentially, to ask the bigger questions in life, such as, why am I here? It also allows us to plan into the future. Chimpanzee, human being, and can anybody else shout out what the third species out of 52 million could possibly be? Say it louder. Dolphin. Well done. Is that working? The dolphin can look into the future. Pretty cool, hey? The brain is a magical system. Could I ask you all to please join me and stand up? Sorry for those of you who don't like standing. Put your hands out in front of you. Please make enough room so that you're not tickling the person in front of you. And I will have to put down the clicker for a few seconds while I do this. Palms facing together and the thumbs are turned up. Now, palms facing down, thumbs together. Palms facing out, thumbs down. Take your left arm, put it nicely over the top of the right arm and join fingers. For those of you who don't know to your lefts and rights, it's okay, neither does my mum, she's 76. It makes no difference apparently. I've just asked you to put your left arm over the top of your right arm. This is what it looks like from the side. Point your index fingers now. And choose somebody to shoot, twist those shoulders and pull, pull, pull. Pull. We have a bit of a problem here tonight, don't we? All right, you can all sit down. Thank you for joining me. Now, I don't start with a magic trick to make you feel silly, even though I do sometimes like to watch people squirm. It's just another personality trait. I start with a magic trick to showcase to you that when you know a thing or two about how the brain works, you too can use it to your advantage, just as I did to you just then, and you're still trying to figure it out. If you really need to know, you can ask later. You see, I know what your brain will pay attention to and what it will vastly ignore. Case in point. Please put your hand up the moment that you can read this notice. That didn't take too long for most of the room. Let's make it a little bit harder this time. How about this one? Getting there, perfect. This message serves to prove how our mind can do amazing things. Your brain will take away the chaos and provide you with logic every time based on your past experience and the training that you've had before. Please put your hands up if you can tell me what this animal is. A monkey. Look, she was frightened to say it. You are correct. Your brain will again take away the gaps and provide you with a pretty little picture in your mind every single time, again, based on your past experience and what it knows that you're looking out for. Now imagine you are now in a cabin. Of course, it's dark, it's stormy outside, you're watching a horror movie. What is your brain going to do? It's going to fill in your emotional response based on past experience, whether that serves you or whether it does not. The subconscious mind is an extremely powerful place to play within. Our focus at all times should be to control how our brain works and to work within the wonders of this miraculous part of our human anatomy. Now, here's our brain in numbers. You'll have between 65 and 80,000 thoughts in any given day. 90% of those are going to be the same boring subconscious thoughts, programs, emotions, and behaviors as yesterday. That actually leaves you with only an estimated 7,000 unique thoughts every single day. Now, imagine back in 1952, the average worker was estimated to process 2 newspapers worth of data every day. Jump forward, 2018, and this number is skyrocketing exponentially. That number is now estimated at 176 newspapers worth of data every day using the same 7,000 unique thoughts. How the heck are we getting on with anything at all? Dramatic. Now, our brain and our subconscious programs do get stronger with age. As we focus in on one resentment, one focus point, one emotion. And with that training, neuroplasticity occurs, changing the very structure and the neural blueprint within our very own brains. The more you focus in on something, the stronger that pathway becomes. It's very similar to walking through a grass field. The more you walk down a particular path, the easier that path becomes. It also means that the reaction from that path is faster in times of stress. If there's nothing more I can teach you here today, it is this, that when you focus inwardly on emotions and worry and fretting at all times, the limbic part of your brain fires up and becomes the fastest response in times of stress. If, however, you are more analytical and future-focused and constantly in your frontal lobe, then you will be more prone to being the person who'll put their hand up and go, "Follow me," in the case of an emergency. But, as I say, with training, certain areas of our brain become strong at the detriment sometimes of other areas. Who can tell me what we're told to do in the case of an earthquake? Go underneath the table, heaps of those. Or doorway, yes, 80 people in that doorway right now. What is it, however, that some of us might in fact be seen to be doing? Freaking out. Well done. Why is that? It's not because they're less intelligent. Not at all. It's because the emotional amygdala has fired in 0.7 seconds faster than any other area of the brain. Luckily for us all, we can change our reactions and we can change how our brains work. To show you the power of this, could I ask you all to please just look away from me for a moment, although I do know it pains you to do so. And just look around the room, just focus in on an object, any object you should choose to look at. Now imagine what that object would feel like on your tongue if you were licking it right now. Go really lick it. I'll come back to me. In that moment, your subconscious was able to pull forth both a physiological and psychological response based on your requirements without you having to tell it to do so, something that it does 24 hours a day without rest. Again, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes not so great. Now, what I learned at university neuroscience no longer actually applies. I was taught, and so weren't we all, in those large textbooks that the human had access to only 10% of the functionality within the brain. That was based on the fact that 90% of your brain is grey matter, glial cells. And we used to think that that was just padding. It was just safeguarding the other functional areas in your brain. Now, since 2012, however, we now know that we do, in fact, have access to 100% of the functionality within our brain because those glial cells now are seen as electrical pathways and are the neural pathways, superhuman highways between those functional areas. And if we damage even the tiniest little bit, we can block off an entire functional area completely. Now, thankfully, we can reverse all of this. But with stress comes atrophy, and suddenly those highways suddenly look like pockmarked country roads. Luckily, your brain builds new pathways every single time you learn a new fact or you learn a new skill. If you are learning something that is just the tiniest little bit above what you already know, it doesn't really count because the brain doesn't get excited. So go out of your way to find new things to learn every day. The more you go out of your way to learn, the slower your cognitive decline. Thankfully for you all, you're all hugely into growth and learning new skills. I can absolutely tell. Now, at the age of 23, I was instantly misjudged walking into my first corporate office job where people were looking at me sideways thinking, another dumb blonde in high heels. And I know what you're thinking. Not much has changed. But I was out there killing it, working hard and overachieving, trying to get as many promotions from under their very noses. The more I achieved, the more thrill I got. But what I didn't realise at the time was that I was building my tolerance levels for adrenaline and epinephrine. You see, every time you reach a goal that you personally want to reach, your brain floods your system with norepinephrine and adrenaline. The more you achieve, the more the floodgates get turned on. Until over time, much like a coke addict, the effect of that adrenaline wears thin. It becomes a lot more muted. And so we go out of our way to do more, to take on more, until over time, it's no longer about that reward system anymore. It's just now who we are at our core. It's now part of our personality to either be a high achiever or, conversely, an overgiver. You take personality away from that equation, and what do you have left? At the age of 29, I suffered my first chronic burnout. I went from being a highly paid decision maker at work to no better than a vegetable almost overnight. I spent 3 days bedridden, paralysed by an unrealistic panic and fear that seemed to come out of nowhere. But through mindfulness, I recovered until only 3 years later, chronic burnout came knocking on my doorstep again. But I knew the signs and symptoms that led me there. And yet I chose to go over that cliff anyway because of my larger fear of being found as incompetent by my peers and colleagues and potentially replaced at work. I started second-guessing all of my decisions, speaking faster, talking faster. I became utterly exhausted but unable to sleep. And then came that defining moment where I lost all compassion, empathy, and emotion for anything or anyone. Now, by the way, that is the definition of clinical burnout above all the other 111 stress illnesses out there. I even remember thinking, no, close my doors so that none of my staff can come in and talk about their weekends. I don't want to know. But I took up yoga, in high heels no less. I went for long walks on the beach, fast walks though. Can't change the leopard spots that quickly. And I also took up meditation, even becoming a meditation teacher in my spare time. I remember even sitting in the car park at lunchtime, trying to quieten my monkey mind with one eye open, watching for no colleagues just to make sure I wasn't being bugged. And again, I recovered. Whoop, whoop. Momentarily. That wasn't until at the age of 37. Technology and me are the best of friends, not. That wasn't until a few years later, obviously, I was diagnosed with the stress-induced cancer. Oh. Here's what I know for certain. If you tell a high performer, an overachiever, or an overgiver to slow down and say no, what are they going to do? You know the answer now. They're not going to slow down. Are you kidding me? You can spend $27 billion across Australasia on your wellness programs. I don't have time for that. That's for them. I have worlds to build. If I don't come into work tomorrow, this company will literally not continue. And this is the reason why burnout is still on the rise, exponentially year on year. We're either the supermen of the world, saving the world in all of our processes and our spreadsheets and our strategies, Or conversely, we are a Nelson Mandela type. So we have learnt to give, take all of your problems away from you until my own back breaks under that pressure. The question here today is, which one are you? If I was to tell an executive client of mine to just relax and take a chill pill, I'd be sentencing them to an expedited trip down Burnout Highway. We can't, in fact, just suddenly go on holiday and expect that our brain understands how not to achieve. Case in point, if you're a Superman amongst you, plan to have some fires to fight while you're on holiday, will you? It's all in the strengthening and processing within our brain. If you are this person and you go on holiday because of your years and years and years of cortisol buildup that's masking your lowered immunity, what happens? The cortisol drops. Suddenly, every flu virus, stomach virus, everything hits within 3 days of us being in Fiji. There is an answer though, and it is simply to retrain our brains before we go on holiday. Retrain our brains to get back to utilising the full 100% of the functionality that every single one of us has. Oops, now it's not working. Now, I did promise Mandy and Cleo that I would give you as much value as I possibly can today in such a short time, and so for that particular reason, I'm going to teach you what's called a brain tattoo. A brain tattoo, normally in my coaching, I teach it with emotion to utilise most of the brain, or also to use the olfactory system, associating smell with something. A brain tattoo is something that instantly recalls an old fact. So from this point forwards, I'm going to teach you a brain tattoo in an acronym form. I want you to remember this day where we met, in this moment. Every time you hear the word burnout, every time you read the word burnout, every time you feel burnt out, I want you to think of us. Okay, so we're going to race through this burnout brain tattoo as quickly as possible. Now, B is for brain fog. We've all had that moment, right, where we've been sitting at our desk hard at work and suddenly we feel as if the aliens have come along and taken away all the really juicy ideas and left us with literally nothing. And so we think, great idea, let's go to the printer. And we get up out of our desks and we turn around and we get halfway across the room and we have no idea why we're here. And so we turn around, don't we, and we look back at our desk and we pray that the memory will just come bouncing back into the mind. But it never does, because of brain fog. We know, research has told us, that brain fog is exacerbated by stress and that stress exacerbates brain fog. There are 5 different elements that cause us to have brain fog. 2 others, which are illness and injury, aren't going to be applicable here today. So I'd like to talk to you about stress, hydration, and also oxygen. Now, your brain is made up of 75% water. Even the slightest dip in hydration levels will impact your cognitive abilities. 2% drop in hydration has been shown to impact your attention, your memory, and also all cognitive tasks. In fact, there was a fantastic study, which I absolutely am thrilled about, that was done in London in 2010, where they took a group of students and put them in a sauna, making them sweat profusely for 90 minutes. Now, what happened after that 90 minutes was that their brains literally shrunk away from the skull, mimicking a 1.5 years of chronic stress. The brain literally shrunk away from the skull from dehydration. So when we are reaching for these sugary drinks, or Coke Zero, whenever they are, there we go, or these caffeinated drinks throughout the day in order to get us through, they are doing us more harm than good. Please teach your teenagers accordingly. And throughout the day, from this point forwards, please reach out for more water if you're wanting to make the right decisions moving forwards. Now, also knowing that your blood is predominantly water and oxygen is sent up to the brain via our bloodstream. When we are dehydrated, our bloodstream becomes really thick and sluggish. So we're literally starving our brains of the fresh oxygen that it needs in order to be optimally performing. So again, reach out all day, drink more water. Now, can I ask you all to take a very powerful breath in through your nostrils and breathe out like this and dump it. And do it one more time, big power breath and dump it. Hopefully you felt a little bit of an energy shift there. When we're stressed, of course, we forget to breathe. We literally start skip breathing. And when we do that, obviously, we get tense, more tense up in the shoulders, and RSI symptoms start to flow. It's all actually how we breathe. And we literally forget to breathe, so please do so. Everybody take your right finger and block your right nostril and breathe in through your left nostril. Very slowly out, very slowly out. In that 4 seconds, you did 3 things. Activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which stops your sympathetic nervous system from creating the stress hormone cortisol. In that instant, you had your PNS turn on. When you breathe out, oxygen shifts from your air-blood barrier across the lungs, meaning it gets pumped into the bloodstream back up to your brain. You feed your brain. It is on a slow, slow, slow breath that we also tell our brain, everything's okay. No need to panic. No need to panic. Because when we're stressed, we skip breathe. When we're calm, we breathe slowly, don't we? Remembering that the brain doesn't understand the difference between what's real and what's fake. You can trick your brain by doing these really simple techniques. Left nasal breathing, 4 seconds, instant turn off of cortisol. Now, R, I'm going to skip over a few here. R is for retraining of your brain. And there was an interesting study that was done in New South Wales in 2012 where they took a group of aggressive subjects, now, specifically grumpy old men. And they asked them to please use their less dominant hand for a period of 2 weeks only to do mundane tasks, such as opening up doors, brushing their teeth. I was about to do that. And what they found after only 2 weeks was that areas of the brain that looked dead under an EEG only 2 weeks earlier had suddenly reignited again, giving those grumpy old men access to areas of the brain that allowed them to pre-qualify their outbursts. Effectively, 2 weeks, left-handed usage, grumpy minnow men, no more. Ladies? But this also works with ladies, by the way, men as well. Grumpy old ladies at home. All that this is a form of brain gym. Now here's the interesting fact. My right motor cortex controls the left side of my body. My left motor controls the right. The moment that my right arm goes across the midline of my body, the opposite side of my brain gets involved to help it out. That is called whole brain activity. It's also known as hemithinking or brain gym. So all we need to do is be training ourselves to do whole brain activities again to strengthen the pathways across our hemispheres. Some activities would be your golf. I heard somebody talking about golf before. Squash, anything such as ballroom dancing. Now, if you do have elderly relatives who are no longer mobile, just picking up 2 pens and getting them to draw symmetrical patterns at the same time will also cause the eyes to be doing a cross-functional brain gym activity. In the University of Texas, not so long ago, they also found that 2 minutes of doing a power pose in the morning increased somebody's testosterone by 20%, which decreases instantly your cortisol levels by 25%. So the next time I come to your office, I'm going to see a bunch of people walking around in their power poses, blocking their noses, looking a little bit weird, and breathing slowly. Are you getting how easy this stuff really is? And thus far, it's all free. So let's move on to neural blueprints. So as I said before, as you train your brain, you become either top-heavy into the frontal lobe, or often you become inwardly thinking, using your emotions above all else. Now, if you are one of those superhumans, then you need to train your brain back into using the whole brain through adding emotion to your decisions. Instead of just getting to work and going blah, 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 think, why am I here? What am I getting juiced up about today? How was I feeling when I first got this job? How excited was I when I first got this job? Go back to finding the why, the super why. Adding an emotion into anything that you are planning will allow your brain to start building new neural programs again. Now, the Superman's curse is that while he's out saving the world, his hippocampus is going nuts and often gets so exhausted that it shuts down all of the adrenals. That's where adrenal fatigue comes in, and I will teach you a little bit later on how to reverse that symptom. So your hippocampus, when it does shut down, other than adrenal fatigue, remembering that this is the area of the brain that actually stores memories, so you start to become forgetful. It's also where we can learn new things, but it's also, for the ladies in the room, it's also where cellular regeneration forms. The more stressed you become, the less plasticity you get in your skin. Again, it is reversible, thankfully. And if we've all watched Rachel Hunter's Tour of Beauty, we'll all know that as well. So if we are, however, the emotional limbic thinker, we are a beautiful giver, then we just need to train our brains to be forward thinking again, to look into a future, to plan some future event, and really get emotionally involved in that instead occasionally. Optimism. Can I get you all to please put a huge audacious smile on your face? Huge big plant one. Come on, get in there. Now look at the person. That's the smile of a crazed psychopath. But it's also a smile that could save your life, because we have more muscles in the human face than anywhere else in the body, 43 to be precise. And many of those are only turned on when we smile. Areas of the brain that are primed to create serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine are also turned on every time you smile. When I was burnt out, I couldn't remember the last time that I had even wanted to smile. If somebody had taken me to a comedy show, I was the person sitting there with my crossed arms going, I just don't get it. I had to train myself over a 3-week period having the tiniest little smiles. Even the smallest little movement. Like, you should have seen me walking around the office. But just like that tap, the more you do something, the bigger the flood becomes. As a child, we laughed an average of 400 times a day for the silliest of things like farting. But as adults, that average is apparently down to between 4 and 17 times, depending on our circumstance. Let's get back to being childish again, for the sake of our health. Now, this one's going to shock you a little bit. It's a slight segue. It's not really a brain hack for stress, but I like to add it in here anyway. You cannot focus on stress and sing at the same time. It's a physical abnormality. But not only that, 1/3 of your sensory motor cortex is dedicated to your oral cavity, being the lips, the mouth, and your speech. Specifically, oral frequency, not the words, but how it comes out of your mouth, has been linked to vibrating your DNA and your genes. Apparently, the more you sing, whether you're off key or on key, the better you feel. Sound healers and vibration therapy are also a form of this old age principle, but I think it's just cheaper to sing in the shower. So let's move into the T. T stands for time, but I don't mean take time, read a book, sit on the beach somewhere. Yes, mindfulness practice is essential to our busy lives, but because I'm a brain hacker, I want to teach you something a little bit new. It is a fallacy that your brain rests when you sleep. In fact, your brain is replenishing a lot of those lost hormones and neurochemicals that you've burnt out during the day, such as serotonin. So please, no matter what else you do, please get your sleep sorted. However, recall earlier in my speech, I told you about the Superman's curse, where the hippocampus was going so crazy that it instantly just burnt out, taking all of your neurochemicals and your hormones down with you. You suddenly had adrenal fatigue. How do we stop this from happening? The brain does have an inbuilt resting system. Every 80 minutes throughout your waking day, your brain wants to move from its most dominant side to its least dominant side for a period of 20 minutes. As children, our education system, way back when, was actually created on this premise. We would do mathematics and then we'd go outside and we'd play. And then we'd come back in and do English and then we'd do art. However, we now walk into our offices and we sit down at our desks and we sit there and we stare at a spreadsheet for 3.5 hours. What's wrong with this picture? It's like a tug of war. You're wanting to focus on an analytical task and your brain is up there going, nope, she's not going to let me. And we do that for 8 hours a day and then we drive home going, I feel as if my brain is mush. Why is that? All we need to do is look at our calendars and somehow throughout your day, somehow, even if for the smallest amount of time, fluctuate between left brain analytical to right brain creative and personable events. Now, I do know that many of our jobs don't allow us to do that, but if I can have a CEO's executive assistant come to me and going, don't worry about it, I've got this, then can't we all? If you do have to look at a spreadsheet for 8 hours, then why not create a colour graph? Because even the smallest colouring in is considered a creative task. Okay, so remember that 20 minutes, every 80 minutes, your brain would really love for you to give it a bit of a break. So let's recap before we move on. What we have learned today is the more that you learn, the slower your cognitive decline. Brain fog is caused by oxygen depletion and hydration. Please drink water all day, every day. Even if you don't like water, do something about that. Breathing, big power breaths, slow breaths to tell yourself, nah, I got this, it's fine. Don't feel it, but I do. Right nasal blockage, so left parasympathetic nervous system breathing. It's the fastest way, if you've got the jitters, to turn off your cortisol response. Retrain your brain by taking up cross-brain exercises. When I had you crossing your legs earlier in this day, that was my way of getting your brain primed to learn. Sneaky, eh? Neural blueprints. Are you that Superman or are you the Nelson Mandela? Because no stress management system is the same for every single person. Every single neural blueprint, every single brain is anatomically different. I cannot give you the blue pill or the red pill today. The power of your smile, even if you don't feel like it, fake it till you make it. Try and find ways of laughing. And remember, go around your office looking as if you own it. By the way, an increase in testosterone increases your confidence levels. Just letting you know. And of course, I've just taught you the 80-20 rule. So you will have a look at your calendar and try, as you might, to change things up a little bit. Again, this is all free. And of course, every time you hear or see or think about the word burnout, you will remember us in this moment. Won't you? Yes. A brain tattoo. It's forever there now. When I see you on the street in 2 years' time, you'll go, ah, brain tattoo. And could I please ask you all one last time to join me in a little exercise, putting down your pens, putting down anything that might be in your hands, putting your feet firmly on the floor. Relax, no cross legs. Relax your breathing. Pay attention to your breathing. And even if you're not in the mood to do this, may I suggest you all try. Because we are all about to go on a magnificent flight together. In my 37th year, I learned a very valuable and powerful lesson. That what you think about can and will change your destiny. I lost my fire. I lost my breath. But you know what? I choose life every single day now. If you think that you're done, then yeah, okay, you might be done. But if you can change your physiological and psychological and neurological state, like in a 2-minute exercise like the one that you just did, then why is it that we're just too busy to really go back to our basics? If you only live once, but if you do it right and you do it well, once is enough. Thank you.